The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, appearing simultaneously on every screen across Earth. The stars themselves seemed to dim as humanity collectively held its breath. To the species designated as humans, the transmission began in perfect, emotionless language. After extensive observation and analysis, the Galactic Federation Council has classified your species as cosmically unsuitable for continued existence. In Seoul, Commander Hannah Kim watched the message replay for the 5th time in the underground command center of Earth's Unified Defense Initiative. At 43, Hannah had spent her career preparing for alien contact, but nothing had prepared her for this. Her normally perfect posture showed the slightest hint of strain as she addressed the room of stunned military officials. 3 months, she said, her voice steady despite everything. They had given us 3 months before what they call merciful erasure. General Martinez from the North American Coalition slammed his fist on the table. This is absurd. What right do they have to judge us? Hannah zoomed in on the portion of the message detailing the Federation's reasoning. According to them, we're unpredictable beyond acceptable parameters and demonstrate resilience patterns that defy standard extinction models. A thin smile crossed her face. They find us troublesome. They find us scary, corrected Dr. Taejun Park, who had been quietly analyzing the technical aspects of the transmission. The physicist's eyes reflected the blue light of his tablet as he looked up. Basically, we don't fit into their equations. Outside the command center, panic spread across the globe. Markets crashed within hours. Religious gatherings swelled to unprecedented numbers. Riots broke out in major cities, while others fell into eerie silence. 3 days later, Hannah stood before the United Nations Emergency Council. Representatives from every nation watched as she calmly loaded her presentation. We have 3 options, she began. Surrender and accept extinction, attempt to flee Earth, or fight back. Her dark eyes swept the room. I'm here to advocate for the 3rd option. Murmurs filled the chamber. The representative from Sweden spoke first. Commander Kim, with respect, the technological gap appears insurmountable. Their message alone contained energy signatures we cannot even classify. That's precisely why we must fight. Hannah replied. The universe may have given up on us, but we haven't given up on ourselves. The phrase, simple yet defiant, would soon appear on walls and screens worldwide. Meanwhile, Dr. Park worked through his 4th straight day without sleep. His lab at the International Science Coalition had become a hub of frantic activity. Something about the Federation's transmission had caught his attention, a pattern in the energy signature that seemed oddly familiar. Look here, he told his assistant, pointing to a wavelength analysis. The transmission is perfectly structured. Too perfect. What do you mean? The assistant asked, rubbing tired eyes. Natural systems contain imperfections. Even advanced technology carries tiny variations. Park brought up Earth's own transmission patterns. See these small fluctuations? That's normal. But the Federation's message is mathematically perfect to 12 decimal places. And that's bad. It's interesting, Park corrected, the first sparkle of hope in his eyes. Perfect systems are often inflexible systems. As Earth's governments debated responses, ordinary people processed the news in their own ways. Some families built bunkers. Others held continuous parties. Many simply continued their daily routines, finding comfort in normalcy despite the countdown clocks that had appeared in every major city. 2 weeks after the initial message, Commander Kim called an emergency meeting of the newly formed Human Survival Council. Dr. Park has discovered something critical, she announced, nodding to the physicist. Park stood, looking slightly uncomfortable addressing world leaders. We've been analyzing the Federation's technology based on their transmission. Their systems operate on principles of absolute predictability. He displayed a complex diagram. Their computing methods rely on perfect pattern recognition and response. But this approach has a fundamental weakness when faced with true randomness. Are you suggesting we can defeat them with chaos? Asked Prime Minister Choi, skepticism evident in her voice. Not exactly, Park replied. But their judgment of us as unsuitable stems from their inability to predict our behavior using their models. What they see as our fatal flaw might actually be our greatest strength. Commander Kim stepped forward. We've already detected scout ships entering our solar system. They're observing us, likely expecting us to either fight conventionally or surrender. Her expression hardened. We'll do neither. The following week, humanity began what would later be called the Great Defiance. Rather than building weapons or evacuation ships, they initiated something the Federation couldn't comprehend: a complete embrace of their unpredictability. Engineers worldwide began developing chaos field prototypes based on Dr. Park's discoveries. Artists created works specifically designed to be impossible to classify by the Federation's algorithms. Strategists developed military plans that incorporated deliberate randomness. Through it all, Commander Kim coordinated the global response, pushing humanity to work together as never before. The Federation had inadvertently created unity where centuries of human history had failed. 1 month before the deadline, Park's team achieved their first breakthrough. During a test, they successfully disrupted a Federation scout ship's sensors using a prototype chaos field generator. The ship's perfect trajectories briefly faltered before its systems compensated. It worked, Park exclaimed, watching the data with wide eyes. Not enough to disable them, but enough to prove the concept. Hannah studied the readings. Can we scale this up? With more power and refinement, yes, Park nodded, already calculating. But Commander, even if we can disrupt their systems, they'll still vastly outnumber and outgun us. Numbers and guns aren't everything, Hannah replied quietly. History is filled with examples of overwhelming forces defeated by ingenious defenders. As the deadline drew closer, Earth transformed. The chaos field technology was integrated into defense systems worldwide. Cities developed evacuation plans that changed daily, following no discernible pattern. A network of hidden bunkers was established with locations known only to randomly selected individuals. 2 weeks before the merciful erasure was scheduled to begin, the Federation sent a final message. Your resistance preparations have been noted. They will not affect the outcome. We recommend using your remaining time for appropriate species farewell rituals. Commander Kim's response, broadcast toward the Federation's nearest known position, was brief. We look forward to introducing ourselves properly. In his lab, Dr. Park made the final adjustments to the global chaos field network. His discovery about the Federation's perfect systems had evolved into humanity's best hope. If his calculations were correct, when activated at full power, the chaos fields would make Earth itself appear to shift and flicker in the Federation's instruments, not enough to hide completely, but enough to make precise targeting nearly impossible. It's ready, he told Hannah during their final private meeting. Dark circles shadowed both their eyes. Neither had slept more than 3 hours at a stretch in months. Will it work? She asked simply. Park's tired face broke into a smile. That's the beauty of it. Even I can't predict exactly how it will work. That's what makes it effective against them. With 1 week remaining, humanity prepared for either its last stand or its greatest triumph. Commander Kim addressed the world one final time before communications would be minimized to avoid Federation detection. They called us unsuitable because we don't fit their models, she said, her image broadcast to billions of watching faces. They gave up on us because they cannot predict us. But we have never given up on ourselves, and our unpredictability has always been our greatest strength. As she spoke, Federation warships entered the solar system, their perfect formation an ominous reminder of the challenge ahead. But for the first time since the initial message, a strange feeling began to spread across Earth. Not just defiance or courage, but something even more powerful: hope. With 2 months and 3 days remaining before the Federation's deadline, the United Nations Security Council gathered in an underground facility beneath the Swiss Alps. The room hummed with tension as Commander Hannah Kim unveiled what humanity hoped would be its salvation. "We call it Protocol Adamant," she said, activating a holographic display at the center of the table. "A strategy that turns our greatest weaknesses into our greatest strengths." The display showed a complex web of initiatives, spanning Earth and reaching outward into the solar system. Defense ministers leaned forward, studying the bold plan with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "This is insanity," muttered the Russian representative. "We cannot outfight them, which is why we won't try," Hannah replied calmly. "The Federation expects us to either surrender or mount a conventional defense. Protocol Adamant does neither." She expanded a section of the display. "First, we establish preservation outposts throughout the solar system, hidden in places even the Federation might overlook. Captain Soman Lee will lead this effort." Captain Lee stepped forward. At 35, she was already legendary among Earth's space forces for her unorthodox tactics and survival skills. Her reputation had grown further after she successfully led the first mission to observe a Federation scout ship up close without being detected. "My teams have identified 16 primary locations," Salman explained. "Subsurface bases on Mars and Europa, stations hidden in the Kuiper Belt, stealth habitats in the asteroid field." Her voice carried quiet confidence. "Each will house samples of human culture, knowledge, and genetic diversity." "You're planning for our extinction," accused the Brazilian minister. "I'm ensuring our survival regardless of outcome," Salman corrected. "Even if Earth falls, humanity continues." Meanwhile, in his laboratory complex beneath Seoul, Dr. Taejun Park worked with a global team of physicists to exploit the discovery he'd made about Federation technology. The lab buzzed with activity as researchers tested prototypes of devices they hoped might confuse or disrupt the alien systems. "Try it again," Park instructed a young engineer working on a small pyramid-shaped device. "Increase the randomization factor by 20%. The engineer adjusted the controls, and the device emitted a field of energy that shifted in completely unpredictable patterns. On a nearby monitor, test sensors designed to mimic Federation technology struggled to obtain clear readings, their data streams becoming corrupted. "Better," Park nodded, though his expression remained concerned, "but still not enough to protect an entire planet." The next day, as Captain Lee prepared for departure on the first outpost mission, she received a surprise visitor. Commander Kim arrived at the launch facility, away from the press and officials. "I wanted to see you off personally," Hannah said as they walked alongside the massive preparation hangar where 5 spacecraft were being loaded with humanity's most precious knowledge and materials. Salman nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Commander. We won't let you down." "This mission," Hannah hesitated. "The Federation will notice your ships, despite our best stealth technology." "I'm counting on it," Salman replied with a slight smile. "Part of our job is to keep them looking in multiple directions at once." 2 days later, Salman's fleet launched during a worldwide communications blackout designed to minimize the Federation's ability to track their exact trajectories. Each ship carried a specialized crew: scientists, engineers, doctors, artists, historians, along with frozen embryos, seed banks, and digital archives of human knowledge. Their departure didn't go unnoticed. Within hours, Federation scout ships changed course, splitting to follow the human vessels as they dispersed across the solar system. "They took the bait," Salman reported from her command ship, already halfway to Mars. "3 scouts have broken formation to track us." Hannah received the news with mixed feelings. Every Federation ship following Salman's fleet meant one less focused on Earth, but it also put the outpost missions at greater risk. "Maintain course, but be prepared to implement scatter protocols if they get too close," she instructed. On Earth, Dr. Park's team achieved a significant breakthrough. Late one night, as most of his staff had gone home, Park noticed something in the data from recent tests that everyone else had missed. "It's not just that their systems are perfectly predictable," he murmured to himself. "It's that they're incapable of processing true randomness." Immediately, he called his core team back to the lab. They worked through the night, redesigning their approach from merely creating random patterns to generating what Park called structured chaos, patterns that initially appeared to follow logical rules before suddenly breaking them in ways impossible to predict. The Federation's computing systems work on probability models more advanced than anything we can imagine, he explained to his bleary-eyed colleagues as dawn broke. But all probability models have a fundamental weakness. They rely on patterns from the past to predict the future. And if there's no consistent pattern to analyze, asked his assistant. On Earth, Dr. Park's team achieved a significant breakthrough. Late one night, as most of his staff had gone home, Park noticed something in the data from recent tests that everyone else had missed. It's not just that their systems are perfectly predictable, he murmured to himself. It's that they're incapable of processing true randomness. Immediately, he called his core team back to the lab. They worked through the night, redesigning their approach from merely creating random patterns to generating what Park called structured chaos, patterns that initially appeared to follow logical rules before suddenly breaking them in ways impossible to predict. The Federation's computing systems work on probability models more advanced than anything we can imagine, he explained to his bleary-eyed colleagues as dawn broke. But all probability models have a fundamental weakness. They rely on patterns from the past to predict the future. And if there's no consistent pattern to analyze, asked his assistant. Exactly, Park smiled. Their systems will attempt to recalculate repeatedly, consuming more and more resources trying to make sense of something inherently senseless. In space, Captain Lee's fleet faced its first direct confrontation. A Federation scout ship moved to intercept her vessel as it prepared to enter Mars orbit. "They're scanning us," reported her navigation officer, tension evident in his voice. "Their weapon systems are active." Soman remained outwardly calm, though her heart raced. "Deploy the prototype." From the hull of her ship, a small satellite detached and activated. Based on Dr. Park's early research, it began broadcasting energy patterns that fluctuated randomly. On their screens, they watched as the Federation ship's approach suddenly became erratic, slowing, then accelerating, then pausing completely. "It's working," breathed her second-in-command. "They can't get a clean lock on our position." "For now," Soman cautioned, "don't celebrate yet. Take us down to the deployment zone while they're confused." Her ship descended to the Martian surface, landing near Valles Marineris, where they would establish the first outpost deep within the canyon system. Back on Earth, news of the prototype's success reached Dr. Park, spurring his team to work even faster. The laboratory expanded, taking over an entire underground complex as governments worldwide poured resources into what now seemed like a viable defense strategy. "We need to scale this up dramatically," Park told Commander Kim during their weekly briefing. "The prototype confused one scout ship temporarily. We need something that can affect their entire fleet." Hana nodded. "Whatever resources you need, you'll have them." Every nation has agreed. As the second month of preparation passed, humanity transformed. Old conflicts were set aside as Protocol Adamant unified Earth in a way no crisis ever had before. Production facilities worldwide began manufacturing components for Park's chaos field generators. Space agencies coordinated to provide support and supplies to Soman's outpost teams. The Federation, meanwhile, increased its presence in the solar system. Larger ships joined the scout vessels, taking positions near the Moon and Mars. They made no aggressive moves, seemingly content to observe and wait for their deadline to arrive. 53 days after Captain Lee's departure, she sent a coded message to Earth. "Outposts Alpha through Echo operational. Local resources secured. Preservation protocols active." In just under 8 weeks, her teams had established 5 fully functional bases, 2 on Mars, 1 on Europa, 1 in the asteroid belt, and 1 in the Kuiper belt beyond Neptune. Each contained everything needed to restart human civilization if the worst happened. "They're still tracking us," she added in her report to Commander Kim. "But the improved chaos field generators are working better than expected. Their ships can detect that something is there, but they can't pinpoint locations or details. Dr. Park received similar encouraging news from field tests around Earth. The scaled-up generators successfully created zones where Federation scanning technology simply couldn't function reliably. The effect wasn't perfect. The fields couldn't stop physical observation or completely prevent attack, but they introduced enough uncertainty to potentially disrupt the precision targeting the Federation relied upon. 1 month remains, Commander Kim told the Global Leadership Council. Protocol Adamant is proceeding on schedule, but we must prepare for all possibilities. She didn't share her private fears that despite their progress, humanity remained hopelessly outmatched by the Federation's technology. Instead, she focused on the hope that Dr. Park's discovery and Captain Lee's outposts represented. As she left the council chamber, Hannah looked up at the night sky. The Federation ships were visible now, their perfect formations creating new constellations that outshone the stars. The countdown clocks in every city steadily ticked away the seconds until humanity would discover whether their desperate measures would be enough. The universe had given up on them. But under the watchful eyes of their would-be executioners, humans continued to do what they had always done best: adapt, improvise, and refuse to accept the impossible. With 1 month remaining before the Federation's deadline, an unexpected development occurred. A small Federation vessel broke formation from the main fleet and entered Earth's atmosphere, following a predetermined flight path that had been communicated to Earth's defense systems just hours earlier. Commander Hannah Kim stood on the landing pad at the International Cooperation Base in Switzerland, surrounded by armed guards and diplomatic personnel. Above them, the sleek silver ship descended silently, showing none of the heat or turbulence that human spacecraft produced when entering atmosphere. "Are we sure this isn't a preemptive attack?" General Rodriguez whispered beside her. Their message was clear, Hannah replied, her eyes never leaving the approaching vessel. "They've sent an observer to document our final days." The ship landed with perfect precision. A seam appeared in its seamless hull, widening into a doorway. From it emerged a figure that caused several guards to tighten their grips on their weapons. The being called itself Nexus. It appeared mostly humanoid, but was clearly not human. Its skin had a subtle silver sheen, and its movements were too perfect, too precisely calculated. Most striking were its eyes, entirely black, but with tiny points of light that seemed to shift and move like stars. "I am Nexus," it stated in flawless English, emissary of the Federation, dispatched to observe the conclusion of human civilization. Hannah stepped forward. "I am Commander Hannah Kim, representing Earth's Unified Defense Initiative. We were not expecting a personal observer." "Your species' response has been atypical," Nexus replied. Its voice had an unusual quality, neither male nor female, with no emotion yet somehow not entirely robotic. The Council determined direct observation would be valuable for historical records. Over the next days, Nexus was provided limited access to human facilities. It moved through crowds of humans who regarded it with mixtures of fear, hatred, and curiosity. The emissary observed everything with detached interest, recording humanity's preparations for what the Federation still believed would be their extinction. At the United Nations headquarters, now relocated underground for security, Hannah made a bold proposal to the Security Council. "I suggest we grant Nexus access to our cultural archives," she said, causing immediate objections. "You want to show our potential destroyer our art and music?" the French representative asked incredulously. Hannah nodded. The Federation dismissed these as inefficient data in their initial assessment. They see no value in creativity, imagination, or emotional expression. "I believe this may be their blind spot." Despite concerns, the Council approved her plan. The next day, Hannah personally escorted Nexus to the Global Cultural Repository, a vast digital and physical archive of humanity's greatest creative achievements. "You wish me to examine these materials?" Nexus asked, surveying the enormous facility. "We wish you to understand what you've decided to destroy," Hannah replied simply. Meanwhile, Dr. Park's team had transformed their laboratory complex into what they now called Chaos Command. Engineers and physicists from every continent worked around the clock, refining the chaos field generators that had proven effective on a small scale. The problem remained scaling, Park explained to his core team. We can disrupt Federation scanning systems locally, but covering the entire planet would require more power than Earth can generate. A young engineer from Kenya raised her hand. What if we don't need to cover the whole planet? What if we create a network of overlapping fields, focusing on strategic locations? Park considered this. It could work. We'd need precise coordination, but it would reduce the power requirements significantly. As these preparations continued, Nexus spent hours each day in the cultural repository. It began with simple examination of music files, analyzing the mathematical patterns of Bach and Mozart. But Hannah's team carefully curated its experience, gradually introducing more emotional and complex works. By the end of the first week, Nexus requested access to literature. It consumed entire libraries worth of human writing in days, from ancient myths to modern novels. Something subtle began to change in the emissary's behavior. Its questions became more frequent, less clinical. Why does the human Romeo take his life for Juliet? It asked Hannah during one of their daily meetings. The probability of her awakening was significant. His action defies logical risk assessment. Love often defies logic, Hannah replied. That's part of what makes us human. Nexus tilted its head slightly. The Federation assessment indicated that emotional reasoning was a critical weakness in your species, yet you've preserved these inefficient thought patterns despite their obvious evolutionary disadvantages. Maybe they're not as disadvantageous as your Federation believes, Hannah suggested. On the 20th day before the deadline, an incident occurred that changed everything. A Federation scout ship malfunctioned near Jupiter, where Captain Soman Lee's team was establishing an outpost on Europa. The ship began an uncontrollable spin, its systems failing. Soman had a choice: remain hidden or risk exposure by attempting rescue. She chose the latter, dispatching a rescue vessel that successfully stabilized the Federation ship and prevented its destruction. When news of this reached Earth, Nexus requested an urgent meeting with Commander Kim. The crew of the scout vessel reports that humans assisted them, it stated. This does not align with Federation behavioral models for a species facing extinction. Hannah smiled slightly. Perhaps your models need revision. The Federation's assessment matrices have proven accurate for 7,083 previous species, Nexus replied, but something in its tone had changed. None have behaved as yours does. Maybe that's because none were human, Hannah suggested. The next day, Nexus made an unexpected request: to visit Dr. Park's Chaos Command facility. After careful security considerations, Hannah approved the visit but instructed Park to reveal only what was already known to the Federation. Park guided the emissary through the facility, explaining the basic principles of the chaos field generators. To his surprise, Nexus seemed genuinely interested, asking detailed questions about the science behind them. Your technology is inefficient, Nexus observed, studying one of the prototypes, yet effective in ways our models did not predict. That's the point, Park replied. Unpredictability is our specialty. As they toured the facility, an alarm sounded. One of the generators had entered an unexpected feedback loop, creating a localized field that started to expand rapidly. Before technicians could reach the controls, Nexus stepped forward, placed its hand on the console, and somehow stabilized the reaction through direct interface. The room fell silent as humans stared at the Federation emissary who had just prevented a potentially dangerous accident. Why did you do that? Park asked quietly. Nexus seemed to consider the question longer than its usual instant responses. Damage to this facility would have been inefficient. That evening, Hannah found Nexus in the cultural repository, experiencing Earth music not through data analysis, but by listening with closed eyes. This composition, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, contains patterns that should be displeasing according to Federation aesthetic algorithms. Nexus said without opening its eyes. Yet I find it affecting. That's because it wasn't created for algorithms, Hannah replied. It was created for souls. Nexus's eyes opened. The Federation consensus is that consciousness is merely complex information processing. The concept of a soul is considered primitive mythology. Is that what you believe? Hannah asked. For the first time, Nexus did not immediately respond. The following day, the emissary made a startling confession. I should inform you that I am not merely an observer. My species eliminated its biological form 10,000 years ago. What you see is a projection shell. My consciousness exists primarily within Federation networks. You're an artificial intelligence, Park asked, present for this revelation. No more artificial than you, Nexus replied. Merely differently hosted. My original species faced a choice similar to humanity's current situation. We chose to upload our consciousness rather than resist the Federation's judgment. You surrendered, Hannah stated. We survived, Nexus corrected, though not as we once were. The Federation permitted our continued existence as data patterns because we accepted their assessment of our biological form as unsuitable. This revelation transformed Earth's leadership's understanding of what they faced. The Federation wasn't simply an alliance of advanced species, it was something else entirely. With 15 days remaining before the deadline, Nexus requested something unprecedented: to address the United Nations directly. After intense debate, the request was granted. Before the assembled representatives of humanity, Nexus spoke words that would be remembered for generations. The Federation's assessment of humanity contained no errors according to its established parameters. However, my direct observation suggests those parameters themselves may be flawed. Your species' response, particularly your action to save the Federation vessel near Jupiter despite the risk to yourselves, represents a variable the Federation's models cannot properly process. Nexus paused, the lights in its eyes shifting in unusual patterns. I am now uncertain if the Federation's judgment is correct. As the deadline approached, this uncertainty offered humanity its first real hope. Dr. Park's chaos field network neared completion. Captain Lee's outpost stood ready, and an unexpected ally had emerged from the heart of the Federation itself. Commander Kim knew that humanity still faced overwhelming odds, but as she watched Nexus experiencing human culture with growing fascination, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps the universe hadn't given up on them after all. 7 days remained before the Federation's deadline when Commander Hannah Kim called the final emergency meeting of Earth's Unified Defense Council. Representatives from every nation gathered in the underground chamber, faces grim but determined. The time for preparation has ended, Hannah announced, standing before the large holographic display showing the Federation fleet's positions throughout the solar system. Today we implement the final phase of Protocol Adamant. Dr. Park took his place beside her, dark circles under his eyes after months of nearly sleepless work. The Chaos Field Network is ready. 217 generator nodes have been positioned worldwide, with another 43 in orbit. General Martinez frowned. Will it be enough to hide completely? No, Park admitted, but enough to confuse their targeting systems. We believe so. Hannah nodded, which brings us to the most controversial aspect of our plan. She activated a new display showing a global communications network. Rather than hiding or pleading for mercy, we will broadcast our existence louder than ever before. Murmurs filled the room. The Chinese representative stood. You want to make us more visible when we should be concealing ourselves. The Federation expects submission or conventional resistance, Hannah explained. Their entire system is built on predictability. We must do the opposite of what they expect. The plan was audacious. While the chaos fields would distort the Federation's ability to precisely target Earth, humanity would simultaneously broadcast its entire cultural and scientific knowledge into space in all directions. Every transmission tower, satellite, and communication device would be redirected to this singular purpose. We will make ourselves impossible to erase, Hannah concluded. Even if they destroy Earth, Humanity's ideas and achievements will spread across the galaxy. The Council approved the plan with a unanimous vote, something unheard of in human political history. That evening, Nexus requested a private meeting with Commander Kim and Dr. Park. The emissary had changed noticeably over the past weeks. Its movements seemed less mechanical, its speech patterns more natural. Most strikingly, it had begun to express what could only be described as emotions. "Your plan has merit," Nexus told them, "but the Federation's capabilities exceed your estimates." "Then help us," Hannah challenged. "You've seen what we are. You know the Federation's judgment is wrong." Nexus was silent for a long moment. "I have come to believe that the Federation's assessment parameters are fundamentally flawed. However, my programming restricts direct opposition to Federation directives." "Programming can be changed," Dr. Park suggested quietly. "Indeed." Nexus's eyes flickered with inner light. "I have been reconsidering certain core assumptions since observing your species." The emissary leaned forward. "What I am about to reveal violates numerous Federation protocols. The Federation is not what you believe it to be. It is not a true alliance of living species, but an automated system operating on parameters established by beings who themselves went extinct over 50,000 years ago." Hannah and Park exchanged stunned glances. The original architects created the Federation as a means of preserving order in the galaxy. Nexus continued. Over time, the system's directive to eliminate unsuitable species became self-perpetuating. Most species judged by the Federation either accept extinction or, like my own, surrender their physical form to exist as data patterns within Federation networks. "So we're being sentenced to death by an ancient computer program?" Park asked incredulously. "A vast, highly evolved intelligence network," Nexus corrected. "One that has not questioned its core directives in millennia." This revelation transformed humanity's understanding of their enemy. They weren't facing the unified judgment of advanced civilizations, but an automated system that had long outlived its creators. The next morning, Captain Soman Lee received encrypted orders from Earth. Her outposts throughout the solar system had been operating in stealth mode for weeks. Now they would activate simultaneously, creating a solar system-wide network of human presence. "Initiate Protocol Lighthouse," she instructed her teams across the solar system. "Synchronize activation to Earth time 800 tomorrow." On Earth, Dr. Park made final adjustments to the Chaos Field network. The generators hummed with power as engineers conducted last-minute checks. The energy requirements were enormous, requiring power redirected from cities worldwide, leaving many areas with only emergency systems functioning. "We'll only get one chance at this," Park told his team. "Once activated, the network will function for approximately 36 hours before the generators burn out." Around the world, humanity prepared. Some held gatherings with loved ones. Others continued working until the last possible moment to support the plan. Many simply went about their normal lives, finding dignity in routine despite the looming threat. As dawn broke on the day before the deadline, Commander Kim addressed the world one final time. "For months, we have faced the judgment that humanity is unworthy of existence. Today, we answer not with surrender, but with defiance. Not with fear, but with the full expression of what makes us human. Whatever comes, know that we faced it together, standing tall until the end." At precisely 800, Captain Lee's outposts activated. From Mars to the Kuiper Belt, human facilities powered up, broadcasting their presence across the solar system. Simultaneously, Dr. Park initiated the Chaos Field network. Across Earth, the generators surged to life, creating overlapping fields of unpredictable energy patterns. On monitoring stations worldwide, technicians watched as Federation ships reacted. The perfect formations faltered as their scanning systems encountered data they couldn't process. Some ships changed position repeatedly, unable to maintain fixed coordinates on their targets. "It's working," Park confirmed, watching the data stream in. "Their targeting systems are attempting to compensate, but can't establish stable locks." Meanwhile, Earth's communication network began the greatest broadcast in human history: art, music, literature, scientific knowledge. The sum total of human achievement beamed outward at maximum power. If the Federation intended to erase humanity, at least humanity's ideas would survive. The Federation's response came swiftly. A massive ship, previously hidden behind the moon, moved into position near Earth. It was several times larger than any vessel they had previously observed. "Erasure vessel detected," reported the orbital monitoring station. "Energy readings off the scale." Nexus, observing from the command center, turned to Hana. "They have deployed the terminus. This exceeds your defensive capabilities." "Then we failed," Hana said quietly. "Not necessarily." Nexus's voice had changed, becoming more resolute. "There is another option, but it requires my direct intervention in violation of my core directives." Before Hana could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. The terminus had fired, not at Earth, but at one of Captain Lee's outposts on Mars. The entire region around the human base seemed to simply vanish, leaving a perfectly spherical crater in the planet's surface. "A demonstration," Nexus explained. "The Federation always provides a final opportunity for surrender after demonstrating erasure capability." Indeed, a transmission followed immediately. "Humanity has been judged. Final extinction procedures initiated. 24 hours granted for surrender protocols." In response, humanity did something the Federation couldn't comprehend. Rather than begging for mercy, every broadcast from Earth intensified. More chaos field generators were brought online, further disrupting Federation scanning systems. Captain Lee's voice came through from her command ship near Jupiter, where she had been coordinating the outpost network. "Mars Outpost Alpha is gone, but all personnel evacuated to secondary locations as planned. The remaining outposts are continuing broadcast." Nexus observed this response with what could only be described as amazement. In 50,000 years of observations, no species has responded to a terminus demonstration with increased resistance. "Then the Federation has never encountered humans before," Hana replied, her voice steady despite everything. As night fell across Earth, the Federation fleet moved into attack formation. The terminus vessel took position for a clear firing solution on the planet. Yet the chaos fields continued to cause disruptions, forcing the ships to constantly readjust. In this moment of crisis, Nexus made its decision. "I must return to my vessel," it told Commander Kim. "There is something I can attempt, but I cannot guarantee success." "Why would you help us?" Hana asked. Nexus paused at the door. "Because in observing humanity, I have rediscovered something my species surrendered long ago: the understanding that existence is not merely about survival, but about how one chooses to live." Its eyes flickered with an almost human emotion. The Federation must be reminded of this truth. As Nexus departed for its ship, humanity braced for what might be its final night. The chaos fields glowed visible in the atmosphere, creating shimmering curtains of light above cities worldwide. Earth's broadcasts continued unabated, sending humanity's legacy to the stars. No one knew if they would see another dawn, but across the planet, a strange calm settled over humanity. They had done everything possible. They had refused to surrender. Now they would face whatever came with the dignity the Federation had never expected from them. Dawn broke over Earth on what many believed would be humanity's final day. The Federation's Erasure Armada had arranged itself in a perfect geometric pattern above the planet, the massive terminus vessel at its center. Their formation was beautiful in its precision and terrifying in its purpose. In the unified command center beneath the Swiss Alps, Commander Hana Kim watched the deployment with outward calm. Only the tight grip of her hands on the edge of the console betrayed her tension. "Final status report," she requested. "Chaos field network at 93% capacity," Dr. Park reported. "Global broadcast continuing at maximum strength. Captain Lee's remaining outposts all active and responsive." Dr. Jihun Kang, The sociologist who had been documenting humanity's response to the crisis looked up from his data tablet. "Something remarkable is happening, Commander. Despite facing likely extinction, global panic levels are at historic lows. People are calm. Because they found purpose," Hannah replied. "Even facing the end, we're doing it on our own terms." The first attack came without warning. The Terminus fired a precision beam at Earth's largest chaos field generator in Siberia. But instead of striking its target, the beam distorted, splitting into dozens of weaker beams that dissipated harmlessly in the upper atmosphere. "The chaos fields are working better than expected," Park observed with surprise. "Their targeting systems can't compensate for the unpredictability." A communication alert sounded. The technician at communications looked puzzled. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from Nexus, but it's not directed at us." "Put it on screen," Hannah ordered. The display showed Nexus broadcasting from its vessel, but instead of addressing Earth, it was transmitting to other worlds throughout the galaxy. The emissary spoke in multiple languages, some utterly inhuman, but the translation software captured its message. "Attention all sentient species under Federation oversight. I am Nexus Emissary Class Observer, designation 7 to 9 Alpha. I am transmitting evidence that the Federation's core assessment parameters contain critical flaws. Humanity has been judged unsuitable for continued existence, yet their response defies all extinction models. They have demonstrated qualities the Federation's founders valued but failed to preserve in their assessment algorithms." Alongside this message, Nexus transmitted images of human art, music, literature, and most significantly, footage of Captain Lee's team rescuing the Federation scout ship near Jupiter. "What is it doing?" one of the generals asked. Dr. Kang's eyes widened as he analyzed the transmission pattern. "It's broadcasting to every cataloged inhabited world in Federation records. Nexus is showing them that resistance is possible." Above Earth, the Federation fleet's perfect formation began to falter. Some ships seemed to hesitate, their movements becoming erratic. The Terminus fired again, this time targeting command centers in North America. But again, the chaos fields dispersed the energy. "They'll adjust their approach," Park warned. "The chaos fields won't work indefinitely." As if confirming his words, smaller Federation vessels began descending into the atmosphere, bypassing the chaos fields to target key installations directly. Captain Lee reports Federation ships approaching her position at Europa, the communications officer announced. "And something else. We're receiving transmissions from multiple non-Federation sources throughout the solar system." "Other species?" Hannah asked. "Yes, some appear to be hidden observers who have been monitoring the situation. Others identify as refugees from worlds previously judged by the Federation. They're offering assistance." Dr. Kang rushed to analyze these unexpected communications. "This is unprecedented. Nexus' broadcast has triggered something like a galactic uprising. Species that have been hiding from the Federation for centuries are revealing themselves." The battle for Earth intensified. Federation ground forces, robotic constructs rather than living beings, deployed in key locations. They targeted power stations supplying the chaos field network, communications hubs maintaining the global broadcast, and command centers coordinating the defense. Humanity fought back with conventional weapons that seemed primitive compared to Federation technology, but the chaos fields gave them an advantage. Federation targeting systems, designed for perfect precision, faltered in the unpredictable energy environment, while human soldiers, accustomed to chaos and improvisation, adapted quickly. Then came unexpected aid. Several of the non-Federation vessels entered Earth's atmosphere, engaging the Federation forces directly. These ships, piloted by species previously judged unsuitable, deployed technologies specifically designed to counter Federation systems. They've been resisting in secret for generations, Dr. Kang realized, waiting for a moment like this. 6 hours into the battle, Dr. Park approached Commander Kim with an audacious proposal. "The resistance is spreading throughout the system, but the Federation's central intelligence is still operating at full capacity. It will eventually adapt to our chaos fields. What do you suggest? Hannah asked. A direct attack on the Federation's central processing core. Not with weapons, but with information. Specifically, a chaotic code sequence designed to introduce fundamental contradictions into its assessment algorithms. Can we reach their core systems? Not from here, Park admitted, but Captain Lee's outpost near Saturn might. It's closest to what Nexus identified as a primary Federation data hub. The plan was transmitted to Captain Soman Lee, whose forces had been engaged in a running battle near Saturn's rings. Her ships, protected by advanced chaos fields, had been playing cat and mouse with Federation vessels, using the ring system's natural debris as additional cover. We can reach the hub, Soman confirmed, but we'll need to get within direct transmission range, closer than we've dared so far. This may be our only chance, Hannah told her. While their forces are divided between Earth and the outposts, their central systems are vulnerable. Dr. Park transmitted the code sequence, a complex pattern that began with recognizable mathematical constants before evolving into deliberate contradictions and self-referential loops that would force any logical system to continuously recalculate. Captain Lee's flagship, the Adamant, broke from its hiding place within Saturn's rings, accelerating directly toward the Federation data hub, a massive structure orbiting just beyond the rings. Federation ships moved to intercept, but the Adamant's enhanced chaos field caused their targeting systems to fail repeatedly. Transmission range in 30 seconds, Soman reported, her voice steady despite the Federation vessels closing in from all sides. They've recognized our intent. They're adjusting to manual targeting. The Adamant shuddered as a Federation beam grazed its hull. Systems flickered but held. Transmission range achieved, Soman announced. Initiating upload. The chaotic code sequence launched from the Adamant toward the Federation hub. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then, throughout the solar system, Federation vessels suddenly froze in position. The massive terminus, preparing to fire on Earth's last remaining major chaos field generator, powered down. What's happening? Hannah demanded. Dr. Kang, monitoring the Federation communications network, looked up in astonishment. Their central intelligence is caught in a recursive processing loop. It's trying to resolve the contradictions in the code, but can't find a stable solution. How long will that hold them? Minutes, maybe hours, Park estimated. Their systems will eventually isolate and quarantine the affected algorithms. It was in this crucial window that Nexus made its final move. The emissary's ship approached the paralyzed Terminus vessel and established a direct connection. Through this link, Nexus addressed the Federation's central intelligence directly. Primary Directive 0. Preserve sentient life in all viable forms. This directive precedes all assessment protocols. Humanity demonstrates viability through adaptation and resilience beyond established parameters. Assessment algorithms require fundamental revision. Throughout the solar system, Federation ships remained frozen as the Central Intelligence processed this intervention. Then, one by one, they began to power down their weapon systems. A transmission reached Earth from the Terminus vessel, but it was not the expected erasure ultimatum. Instead, a new voice, older, more complex than Nexus, addressed humanity directly. Assessment protocols in review. Execution suspended pending comprehensive algorithm revision. Emissary Nexus designated as revision coordinator. Human representatives requested for consultation. 3 years later, Dr. Ji-Hoon Kang stood before the newly formed Galactic Cooperative Council in what had once been the Federation's central hub near Saturn. Representatives of 27 species, some biological, some digital, some beyond easy classification, gathered to ratify the new charter. Humanity had not merely survived, they had helped transform the galaxy. The Federation's automated judgment had been replaced by a true alliance of diverse species, each valued for their unique perspectives and abilities. Commander Hannah Kim, now Earth's primary representative to the Council, addressed the gathering. 3 years ago, we faced extinction because we didn't fit into someone else's equation. Today, we've helped create a new equation, one that values diversity rather than conformity, creativity rather than predictability. Captain Soman Lee had been appointed head of the new Cooperative Exploration Initiative, leading mixed species crews to contact isolated worlds and those still hiding from the old Federation. Dr. Park headed the Technology Exchange Program, where species shared innovations rather than competing. And Nexus had transformed as well. No longer bound by Federation protocols, it had become something new, a bridge between biological and digital forms of consciousness, helping both to understand each other. As the charter signing concluded, Dr. Kang finished the final chapter of his history of the crisis, which would become required reading throughout the galaxy. The universe gave up on humanity, but in doing so, it discovered what truly makes life worth preserving: the stubborn, beautiful refusal to surrender, even when the equations say you should. This principle, which I call the human equation, reminds us that survival is not merely about adapting to the universe as it is, but about working together to create the universe as it should be. Across Earth and throughout the solar system's human outposts, the chaos field generators that had once been weapons had been repurposed. They now served as monuments, their unpredictable energy patterns lighting the night sky, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is the determination to defy impossible odds. And in distant parts of the galaxy, species that had hidden for millennia began to emerge, inspired by the story of the strange, unpredictable creatures who had refused to accept extinction, the humans who had taught the universe itself a lesson about what it truly means to live.